Hey there, it's Melissa Benaroya, and today we are going to talk about impulse control and why your child might be quote unquote out of control. I hear that a lot, and I'm only using that language because that's what parents use to describe their children when they reach out to me. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about what's underneath that or what's driving that behavior, and also what we can do to help them and avoid some of these quote unquote out of control behaviors. So I'm going to talk primarily about younger children, but everything really that I talk about applies to children of all ages. So if this is the first time that we've met, my name's Melissa Benaroya. I am a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a therapist, but I work as a parent coach, and I do a lot in my own community to support parents, but I also am supporting parents online around the world. So I have a little bit of experience because I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And I also have my own kids. I have a 13-year-old and 11-year-old, and I get to practice everything that I preach. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about what is driving what some parents called aggressive or out of control or just unwanted behavior. So some of those things might be grabbing things, talking when you've asked them not to, just doing things you've already asked them not to, and knowing that there's already going to be a consequence, but they still do it. Screaming, spitting at you. I mean, there's all kinds of behaviors out there which parents label out of control. And I just want to start by acknowledging that many young children, and most young children, just depending on the age, have very limited impulse control, okay? The brain is still under development, okay? It's still being built. The wires are still being wired. And so many times kids are acting without thinking. They are impulsive. They lack the ability to think through what they're gonna do or what they want. They just act on it. And even really young kids communicate through their behavior because they don't necessarily have the verbal skills or the awareness to express what they want or what they need or how they're feeling. So they communicate by showing you. And that can be a little bit stressful as a parent, can be very inconvenient when you're somewhere and you need to get something done, but it is totally normal and typical. So I just think first normalizing these behaviors is really important. They're not doing these things to drive you crazy. I promise you. It's just part of the process of growing up. Now, one other thing to take into consideration is your child's temperament, okay? We are all born into this world with an innate kind of personality or temperament, and that definitely influences a way that a child interacts with the world and people in the world. So some people call it like a sweet, quiet child, and I like to call it a spicy child. I don't like to label them like nice and bad or what, there's all kinds of crazy labels. But I think first noticing your own temperament and your own personality and how that influences how you view your child's. Because if you're kind of an introverted person, it can be really challenging to have a child that's more extroverted because A, you don't really understand it, and B, you can't relate. So I think just acknowledging who your child is can make a huge difference. All right, so impulse control and temperament really are driving a lot of these behaviors, and a lot of it is all developmentally appropriate. It's exactly what they should be doing. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do when these behaviors arise and what we can do to ideally avoid them. So first of all, when your child is acting out and maybe having a big emotion, I think first just acknowledging it and empathizing, letting them know, I hear you, I see you. And it can be communicated through like one simple empathetic statement. It can be like, it's so hard when you don't want to get your hair cut, or oh man, it's such a bummer that we have to leave the park when you're having so much fun. It's that first thing that we say before anything else. It just allows us to connect with them, and that piece is huge. And many times parents skip this piece of parenting because they just need to get something done. But I think we tend to be much more effective when we connect before we correct. So thinking about empathizing first, and this really just kind of reflecting back how you think your child might be feeling or what they might be experiencing or maybe what they might want or need. So that's kind of the first piece. I think a second thing that can be really helpful is using something called emotion coaching. And I am a certified Gottman educator, so I use John Gottman's emotion coaching as a parenting tool. And it's a tool really to problem solving. So having a framework to solve problems, having that language to work through these challenges is really empowering to you as the parent, because you're not just like winging it and being reactive. Like, you have an approach, you have a framework to have these conversations. And I think the benefit is that when we consistently use these types of tools or these types of conversations, kids start to adopt this language and these practices. So they learn to solve their own problems without you even getting involved. So emotion coaching is really listening and acknowledging. So kind of noticing what's going on and noticing that this is a gift. This is an opportunity for teaching and connection, not something that's like painful and embarrassing and we want to get through. May be a little bit embarrassing, but that's okay. If you embrace this as a teaching moment or a moment of connection, it's going to shift things completely. So I think just noticing it, going back to validating and empathizing, just reflecting back or paraphrasing what you think they want or need or what they're feeling, helping them kind of come up with some language to say what they want or need or how they're feeling. So helping them identify what it is they wanted or why they did something. Really powerful, because many times, once again, they're reactive. They're not even aware of what they want or what they need or what they're doing. So helping them build that awareness is really important. And then also acknowledging the emotion that's kind of driving it. So maybe I wanted my toy back, and then we can help them reflect by saying, well, how did it feel when your sister took your toy? So they can start having that awareness of how they're feeling and hopefully build some vocabulary around emotions, which empowers them to then verbally communicate it without having to act it out. So I think emotion coaching has a ton of benefits. Parents that emotion coach have children that do better socially. They have more friends. They're able to keep friends. They do better academically. They are physically healthier. They have fewer colds and flus. And they recover from stressful situations a whole lot faster. So there's so many benefits to being an emotion coach. And I have lots of information about that on the Childproof Parenting blog. So feel free to check that out. One other thing I think, well, actually a few more things, but one thing that I think is also important is being mindful of giving our children breaks, okay? Our world is pretty overscheduled. At least here in the United States, things are pretty intense and kids are overscheduled on average. Not all kids, but a lot of kids are overscheduled. So noticing that we have kind of a limited, even us as adults have a limited amount of control. Okay, self-control, impulse control. And if we've had to maintain that all day long, it's hard to have the energy to continue to control those impulses. So be mindful that we plan breaks in our children's day, that when they come home from school, it's not clean up or start homework, that they just have some downtime, that there isn't an after school activity every single day of the week. So being really intentional about giving kids breaks can really help them control their impulses. All right, so in addition to breaks, something that you can do proactively that I think is actually fun is actually using games. So games like Simon Says or green light, red light are both really great, or even follow the leader, where your child really has to listen and pay attention before they act. So using some games, even memory games have shown to influence a child's ability to control their impulses. So integrating some of those games that build up that skill, because we are all born with a certain amount of impulse control, but like a muscle, it's something that we can strengthen. So I think incorporating some of these games can definitely help really young kids especially strengthen those skills. All right, lastly, the fifth thing that I think to be really mindful of if you feel like your child's constantly out of control is what you're modeling. what is the behavior you're modeling? Are you flying off the handle when somebody cuts you off? When you're driving, or do you lose it when your child does something? So being mindful of how you express emotion, because if you fly off the handle, you better expect that's how your child's going to react when something happens to them as well. So modeling that, and thinking about impulse control. The use of phones, screens, technology is also something really important that we need to model. So if our kid constantly wants to be in front of a screen, I think number one, we need to think about screen usage and talking about what the limits are in our house. But more importantly, what are you modeling? If you're constantly tweeting, checking your email, playing online games, even if you're reading books on your phone, or modeling that use. And so I think being, thoughtful about leaving your phone in the car when you go to the park to play, or having some kind of rule about putting phones away during meals, or whatever it is that you can model some of this self-control or this impulse control. So I just shared with you 5 things today, 5 simple things. Some of them are to avoid some of these big out of control behaviors, but some of them are also ways that we can manage it when it happens, because kids are going to do this stuff. We don't want to raise little robots, because if we did, we'd be raising people that cannot think for themselves, that cannot make good choices because they haven't been given the opportunities to learn how to make choices, get comfortable failing, and know that they can make choices on their own, that they don't have to turn to somebody else to make choices for themselves. So that's a little bit today on talking about the out of control behaviors that I hear a lot about. And of course, I posted something on the blog, so you'll be able to find all of this information on the blog. And I've absolutely had to create a handout, so I've got a little cheat sheet for you as well. So if you want to keep some of these tips and strategies handy, you can just print it out and have that cute little handout there ready for you. I'd love to hear any questions you have about this topic, so feel free to list those in the comments below. I will link the blog post below, so if you want to read it or share it, and I'd love for you to share it, because I want more and more parents to get this type of information. Because I think what I hear is most people don't think what their child is doing is normal. The parents that I work with in my private practice often want me to come to their house and see their child because they don't believe that other children are doing these things. But I guarantee there's really not a whole lot of difference between your child and the one that looks perfect on Facebook, okay? So I just really want to normalize this and help you have an awareness around what's driving the behavior and what you can do to either respond thoughtfully and intentionally or avoid them. All right, that's enough from me today. Thank you so much for showing up. I love your comments. Feel free to send in your questions. If you're not on my mailing list already, please jump on. If you go to childproofparenting.com, you will have lots of opportunities to sign up for my newsletter. So go and check it out. If you have any questions, once again, I like writing and answering questions based on what is coming up for you, what's going on in your house. So please don't be shy. Please don't feel like you're taking up space, because so many parents have the exact same challenges and questions you do. All right, everybody, have a fantastic week. I will see you next week on another Childproof Parenting Live. Bye for now.